Before deep diving the underlying technology of containers, let's understand how it is different than virtualization. So the thing is, if we talk about the virtual machines, here we have the comparison between virtual machines and containers. These containers can be anything like a Docker container or container D containers. There are multiple container runtime that we will talk about, which creates the containers, but here we took the example of Docker containers. So if we talk about the virtual machine, how the infrastructure is built, we have a physical server, means your physical host. In your case of VMware, it can be ESX, okay, ESX. So on top of that, normally what happens, we have two types of concept here in virtualization. Either we can use this hypervisor directly on physical host, or we can run this hypervisor on top of our operating system. It's all depend on us. After this running this hypervisor, it help us to abstract this physical box into virtual machine. That means here these virtual machines are built out of the resources which we are having for this physical host. So here the division, or we can say the abstraction, is on the host. So we can say it's a host level abstraction, host layer abstraction we can say. Okay. So what we do, we divide this host into chunks of VMs. And on that VM, we can run our OS, we can run our code, means libraries and dependencies what we require. And top of that, we can run our application. This is about virtualization. If we talk about the containerization, it's the same like you can have your host machine, you can have your operating system. But here, in place of hypervisor, we use container engines. So in this case, we are having Docker engine here that help us to abstract the operating system. Means the resources what it is taking from the host operating system, not from this host. So this containers is having the ability to utilize whole resources from this host. But in VMs, we can't use it. If we give the resources, like it will use only 2 CPU, 4 gigs of RAM, and 100 gigs of data drive from this host, then it will use only that one. But here in this case, if needed more, it can utilize the resources from this physical host. So you can understand that if your underlying infrastructure is huge, you have the more flexibility to scale, right? But there are something through which we can limit these resources, but ideally it is having the access of whole host. The only thing, it's do the dividation on the host operating system which we are running. So if we talk about in one line, container abstract at the OS layer, virtualization divided virtualization abstract at the host layer. So this is the difference between the virtualization and container. So here, if you see in the containers, you don't see any guest OS, right? No guest OS required. That's why there is no need to boot any operating system to run this containers. That's why it is too much fast. But on the other hand, if you want to run your virtual machine, first the operating system will run. Once it will functional properly, then only it will execute our application. But on the other hand, containers don't require these things. That's why containers are best in terms of speed, in terms of efficiency, in terms of isolation, everything. So this is the future of our modern infrastructure.